Hey folks. So, to preface this, I just had a 15-minute coughing fit and my throat's really sore. And I'll probably do that a lot. I'm also going to be drinking my water. But I want to tell you a story. A story about me and about transplant, as in lung transplant, as in double lung transplant, and cystic fibrosis. So, cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition. It's something that a person is born with and that they live with for their entire lives. And it, I want to say the gene was discovered in the 80s, but I could be wrong. Please, please, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it was definitely discovered before I was born. And when I was born, I should have been tested. I had every symptom of cystic fibrosis at birth. I was a quality candidate to be tested, but they didn't test me. I can only guess at the reasons why. But basically the doctors told my mom that my problems were just the way I was and to deal with it. Which, thinking now from the perspective of a parent and an aunt, I couldn't imagine being told that a child that I care about wasn't sick when I knew they were sick and to just deal with it. I couldn't imagine how that would have felt. So shout out to my parents for not beating the crap out of that doctor. Sorry. But I need to get this story out while it's fresh in my head and while I'm motivated to do it. But basically, my childhood was a mess of medical problems. More about my childhood in the memoir that I'm writing. But my childhood was a mess. I got really sick at about 6 or 7. Had some knee problems, had some joint problems in general. Had intestinal problems, had breathing problems. I had problems coming out of my ears. And still these doctors got it wrong. They decided that all of my problems were separate from each other. So they diagnosed them separately as infectious arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis for the joint problems. Crohn's disease or inflammatory bowel disease for the intestinal problems, and then just really, really severe chronic asthma for my breathing problems. Not quite right, guys. So I lived with all these sicknesses and all these problems being not treated properly until I was about 13. And then I had a really, really, really bad coughing fit. I wouldn't even call it a fit. I'd call it a coughing episode, maybe, because it lasted almost a month. It wasn't a quick thing. I just kept coughing, and we had no idea why. But my mom went to my general practitioner, who I guess was going to night classes or something, and had discovered cystic fibrosis through his night classes. So he told my parents about it and got us in contact with, oh my gosh, my hair, sorry, with a specialist in another town upstate from where we had been living at the time. And I went up there, and within moments it feels like I was diagnosed. They did a sweat test, and I think they did a blood test. Both of which came back positive for cystic fibrosis. So at 13, A doctor looked me in the eye and told me I would be very, very lucky if I saw the end of high school, which I was set to start high school about a year after that point. So they told me I'd be lucky if I saw the end of that. And I wouldn't have a normal high school experience. I would be in and out of the hospital, and I would be sick a lot, which was true. That is exactly what happened in high school. But I got through it. I rebelled really hard. I suffered a ton of really, really, really crippling depression. I didn't put forth my best effort in school because I didn't think there was much of a point. I kind of set my life up for failure because I didn't think I had one. Well, when I got to about maybe 16, they extended my life expectancy a little bit and said I'd be lucky to see 25. Just so you know, I'm 27 as of a couple weeks ago. So, proved those doctors wrong, barely. But anyway, some other shit happened, stuff happened in high school that wasn't great, but isn't directly related to cystic fibrosis, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here, is just cystic fibrosis stuff. But I made it through alive. My pulmonary functions were going down. They certainly weren't going up. But I started pulmonary function testing in the 80s, so that's a percentage. Out of 120%, I was at 80% when I was diagnosed. That percentage declined as time went on. It kind of like increased a little bit and sustained for a little bit once I started treatment, and then it started to decline. And then they added treatments and it went back up, and then it declined and up and down, and it was all over the place. And then at about 23, so the end of 2017 into the beginning of 2018, I got really sick. Like really, really, really sick. And they thought I was dying. I thought I was dying. Pretty much everybody did. I had a really bad case of pneumonia that was being very resistant to all my medications. I'm already very drug resistant, which means that a lot of the normal CF drugs that they use to fight infections and stuff don't work for me. And like the newer drugs that they've come out with that help people with CF, I don't qualify for because I have a very rare mutation combination. So like the modulators, like people in the community know these names, but like Orkambi and Trikafta, those don't work for me. I'm not even remotely able to take them. So I'm super sick in 2018, trying to piece my life together. I'm trying to balance college right now, or at that point, I say right now like it's happening now. I'm trying to balance college and a job and a relationship, and it's just craziness. And I just got really sick. And it was pneumonia. It was very, 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 very bad pneumonia. And it kept me knocked out pretty consistently for about 4 or 5 months. And at the end, that's when I went on oxygen. I started on 3 liters continuously, 24/7. Excuse me. So I started on 3 liters, and it wasn't great being on oxygen all the time. It doesn't seem like it would be a big deal, but it really kind of is. And then after that, they brought up transplant. So I started the transplant process in April of 2018. I went in, I did what's called the workup, which at our hospital means you go to the hospital 4 days in a row, back to back, for lots of testing and procedures and all this other stuff to make sure that your body is in the best working order that it can be in order for you to survive transplant. So I went through all that testing and was told, at this point I'm too sick. I need to get a little bit better. So they send me to pulmonary rehab, and they change my medication regimen a little bit and do all that. and I got to like a reasonable point for transplant. And then I had a bit of a mental breakdown. 2018 was a really hard year for me. I mean, medically, that's when all this transplant stuff had happened. I had pneumonia for almost half of the year. I was in the hospital more weeks than I was out. I lost a lot of friends that year to cystic fibrosis. I can think of 4 or 5 off the top of my head. And I lost a few friends to car accidents, and I lost somebody to sickle cell, which is another medical disorder that's not pleasant to deal with at all. So I was having a really hard time. I also had lost the relationship that I had had at the beginning of the year, which had been going on for about a year and a half or so. My housing situation was a huge disaster. I was financially slumped. I had to pluck my brother out of his life and move in with him in Indianapolis, which I had never lived in Indianapolis before, and all my friends were south. And I was told that I didn't have a good enough support system and like all this other stuff. And it just really got under my skin. And I was having a bad day. And I told my mom that I was kind of scared that I was going to do something stupid. And my brother at the time had a gun in the house because he believes in carrying, which I'm perfectly fine with, but I personally don't like guns for this reason. But I told my mom, I'm like, I'm reckless eyeballing this gun and I need help. And she called my coordinator, my lung transplant coordinator. His name's Ken. Hi, Ken. And he kind of led me to believe that getting help for my mental episode would not affect my transplant stuff, and that getting the help was actually like really, really good, and it would look good to transplant that I had sought help for such a thing instead of just doing it. So I went ahead and I admitted myself to Methodist. My mom came up all the way from Louisville to take me, so I didn't have to go alone. And I got admitted for suicidal ideation and was on suicide watch for I think 48 or 72 hours, I can't remember. And then at my follow-up transplant appointment, I was told I was not mentally stable enough for a lung transplant. And that was incredibly difficult to hear. I felt betrayed. I felt lied to. I don't anymore, but it took me almost an entire year to stop being mad at the transplant team for that. I felt like in trying to save my own life, I had destroyed it and taken away my chance at transplant. But they told me, give it a year. Keep up doing everything you're doing. We're going to see you back in 6 months, and then 6 months from there. And at that 12-month mark, we're gonna look at your case again. We're gonna reevaluate. And I was like, okay, great, perfect. So I fought tooth and nail every day for a year, going to therapy, talking to my therapist on a weekly basis, doing everything I possibly could to promote self-care, and just live my best life as best as I could. They told me I had to quit school and I had to quit working and all the other things I've already mentioned. And it was just really, really hard, like super, super hard. I felt like my whole life was just paused until, and I was just, no, hang on, let me rephrase this. I felt like my whole life was paused and I was just waiting for some like unseen force to like push the play button again, but the controller wasn't in my hand. So everything was very out of control, and I'm a control freak, so that does not work for me at all. And it was just a lot of waiting and not knowing and being scared. I was scared to death for over a year that they would reevaluate my case and say something else was wrong, and that I still couldn't be listed, and that I had to wait longer. Well, 2020 started off on kind of the right foot. I was hospitalized in January, but then just wasn't. I went from being hospitalized every week, like every other week I was in the hospital, to not being hospitalized for literally about 5 months. And in that 5 months, I had my appointment with Transplant, my 1-year appointment, the one I was looking forward to. And they told me at that appointment, we're going to present your case to the board, and we are so excited, and everything looks great, and you've checked off all of our boxes, and we're going to get you listed for transplant. And I was so excited. I told the world that I was being told I was being listed for transplant in June is when they told me I would be listed. They told me that in May. And they told me, you'll be listed for transplant in June. Just hold on a little bit and we'll present your case to the board. And I said, okay, great. Perfect, wonderful. They said they'd call me in a week with a final answer and to tell me when my listing appointment was going to be. And I was at pulmonary rehabilitation 1 week later, like I was every week. And I got the call from my coordinator, and the answer was no. They told me I was too healthy for a transplant. After all the work I had done, after everything I'd gone through, after 2+ years of fighting and waiting and being scared of being told no, they got my hopes up, and then a week later they told me no. I'm not mad at them. I can't be. I understand that these lungs that I'm wanting are incredibly precious. They don't just sit on a shelf waiting for people to use them. They're not in heavy supply, but they're in heavy demand. And the transplant team has to be really careful with who they give them to. I should even say gift them to, because they are a gift. But they told me no. And they said, we'll reassess in July. I said, okay. I said, that's great. I don't trust you guys to give me good news anymore, but okay. Well, then I got sick again. I ended up in the hospital June 10th, I think. Somewhere around that area, with just a normal cystic fibrosis exacerbation. While I was in the hospital, they decided to give me a sinus surgery that I really needed. That sucked. Recovery sucked, but it feels a little bit better now than it did before, so I guess that's a good thing. Well, I got discharged from the hospital on June 22nd. Then about 5 days later got put back in because the sinus surgery made my body go septic. So I ended up back in the hospital for about 5 days, I think it was, until my birthday, which is July 2nd. So I got released on my birthday, but I got released on IV meds for at home. So I had to take care of that for 6 days, which sucks. I hate doing IV antibiotics at home. I don't know why I agreed to it in the first place. And then now, about a week and a half later, look where I am. Back in the hospital with pneumonia, feeling kind of crummy. And this is normal. My lung function's 25% capacity. And this is normal for me. But right before I came back to the hospital, I had a virtual visit with my transplant team. And they told me I was sick enough now to be listed for transplant, and that they would be giving me a call next week, which was this week, on Thursday, the 23rd, with more information. Today is July 23rd, 2020, and at 9 o'clock this morning, I got told that I'm approved for transplant. I've already posted one video about this. It was shorter. It was 5 minutes. And it was just, hey guys, I'm transplanted. It's great. I'm a little scared, but it's great. Well, this one I kind of just wanted to give some people a little bit more of the picture. If you want even more, follow me on here. Because I'm writing a memoir, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And it will be available relatively soon. I'm hoping to get it done within like 3 to 6 more months and published on Amazon. I don't know how much I'm going to charge for it. I'm going to have to charge something because I honestly can't put that much work into something and make it free. I can't afford to do that. I don't have the money. But if you want to know my full 100% story, it will be in that memoir. I'm planning on making it somewhere between 50 to 100 pages, so it won't be super long to read. But that's my transplant journey. It's been a long time coming. I'm exhausted. I'm in pain. I am emotionally just tapped. And I am just so happy that I have this chance now. Anybody who knows me knows I have so much I want to do with this life. And all of it's been put on hold because of waiting for transplant. And I'm just ready to be listed, to get the call, to get the lungs put in. That sounds like I'm a car. Whatever. To get the lungs put in and to recover so I can get on with the life that I deserve. The life I've worked really hard for.